Today I'm going to be working on Mrs H's van. Got a few issues with it, and mainly it's overheating, and we can't work out why it's overheating. She took it for the MOT, they put it on the ramp, and it was only on there a few minutes, and the temperature gauge went right up. So what I've done is I've been running it, and I've seen if the thermostat opens, which it did, but the fan's not kicking in. So I need to look at that and find out why it's overheating, because obviously it's not practical, the vehicle can't be used. So I need to look into this, and that's what I'm going to do today and see what the problem is. So this is the vehicle in question, and it's a Daihatsu Hijet, and we call it a mystery machine for obvious reasons. So this is another one of Mrs H's little toys. So what I'm going to do is I would normally, if it was any other vehicle, I would get it on a ramp and work on it, but this one's quite easy to work on. Everything's at hand. So I'll show you around the passenger side here. So if you go into the passenger side, tilt the seat back, and everything's just there. So it's easy enough to work on. That's the engine. The radiator's behind this panel here. So I'll look at all that in a minute. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to disconnect the fan and test the fan to see whether the fan's actually failed or whether the fan's working. So I'm underneath the front of the vehicle now, and you can see here that's the viscous fan. That's not operating when we need it to. When it gets up to temperature, it's just not kicking in. So you've got the radiator here. So this is the radiator, and then this is the switch. Now this works by, when it gets to a certain temperature, whatever temperature it might be, 86 degrees or whatever it is set to, it sends a signal up this wire to the fan and then turns the fan on. It's not happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug this. Right. So that wire now goes to the fan. That's the fan switch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bypass this switch here directly to the fan and see if it operates. So what I'll do now is the easiest way for me to do that is I've got a spare 12-volt battery. So I'm just going to get a 12-volt battery and connect it up to that. What I've got now is I've got a 12-volt battery here with the connections. I've just literally clipped on a couple of wires to that. So I've got one wire going into that connection now. And that's the connection that's going to the fan. So what I need to do now is, there's the fan. So if I go on to this other connection here, there we go. Okay, so that proves that the fan is working. So it's not the fan that's at fault. So it's got to be this switch here. So what I'll do is I'll take that switch out. Again, it's easy enough. It's probably a 19mm spanner. Take that out, and I'll obviously drain all the coolant out of it and replace that. I've just slackened the switch now, so I've undone that with a spanner. So this will just come out now. I'll make sure as well that the water inside the coolant isn't hot before you unscrew this, otherwise you'll have boiling hot water coming out on your hands. Right, so I think this is the problem. I think this switch has failed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and search for one and see what I can come up with. So that's basically a copper washer on it. So these should be readily available. I'll go and see what I can get, and then I can show you how to refit it and see whether that actually was the problem. Well, I've now taken the switch out the bottom of the radiator, which has dropped most of the fluid. So what I'm going to do now is, while I'm waiting for the the new switch to come. I'm going to show you where the radiator is. So there's a small panel on the front here, and those two screws there, just take those out. Panel comes away, so just put that on the floor there. Behind here is the radiator and the radiator cap. So if I take that off, there's the radiator cap. But also, if you come around the passenger side, there's also another cap here, and this is another coolant cap. So I'll take all these off because it allows the air through and allows the last of the coolant to drain out. Now the only thing I have noticed is the header tank. The header tank's full of brown water. That's because it was boiling over. So what it's done is it's cleaned the inside of the engine and dumps it all in the header tank. The only thing is, without me siphoning that out somehow, I'm not going to get the last of that out of there. There's probably, I don't know, there's probably 1.5 litres of water in there, maybe 1 litre of water in there. So what I'm going to do, the easiest way to empty that, I think, is there's a bolt on here and a bolt on there. They look like 10mm to me. So what I'll do is I'll get a spanner, I'll get them off, and hopefully the tank should lift out. That was easy enough. It helps when things have not been exposed to the weather. Right, so there's the other one down there. Just loosening that with the spanner. It's a little bit tight, that one. I'm hoping when they're out that there's only the 2 bolts holding this tank in. Yeah, I've just seen it move. There we go. Right, so that's the 2 bolts out of that. So if I lift this tank out, oh, maybe there's not 1 litre in it. The tank's not as big as I actually thought it was. I thought it was a bigger tank than that, so there's not 1 litre in it, but you can see the colour of that. Oh, the ducts have come over now because I mentioned water. Right, so, and you can actually see, the colour of that. So there's the colour of that water that was in that header tank. If I'm going to change all the cooling system in this, all the water and the coolant, and put antifreeze in it and that, I might as well make sure it's all cleaned. So what I'm going to do now is just give that a good scrub out before I refit it. So there's the header tank now. That's it all cleaned. I mean, it's not like new, but it's got most of the crud out of it. So again, with this, just reverse procedure of how I took it out. Literally just goes into there. Again, it's only 2 bolts. One in the top. One down here. So all I'm going to do with these is just do them finger tight to start with. And then I can tighten them with the spanner. Right, so that's that in. Right, I took the switch out, which is the fan switch, So that's the one I removed. So this has been a real pig to find. Now if I put in Daihatsu Hijet and the year and the engine size for this, that's what it comes back with. And you can see the difference in size. Even the electrical connector, the whole thing is completely wrong. Yet according to all the searches, all the part numbers, all the model numbers and everything, that's the correct one. Well, it actually isn't. So I've managed to find this one. So there's the new one. The electrical fittings are the same. The ends are the same. Same thread. And that one, the new one, is actually for a Vauxhall. So I've managed to track it down eventually. So it's a Vauxhall one. So if you've got one of these vehicles and you find it's got that sort of switch in it, don't go getting that thing. It's wrong. So it's that's the part numbers that came on this one. Actually for a Vauxhall. So what I'm going to do now it's arrived, I'm going to get that fitted. So I'm going to fit the fan switch now. Although I did a comparison with the old one that came out, I still haven't tried this in position yet, so I'm hoping it's the right thread. Yeah. So that fits nicely there. Now I said earlier that I thought this was a 19mm. I was miles out, it's 30mm. So if I just a spanner on that. You don't want to over tighten this, but by the same measure you don't want it leaking either. I noticed this new one though has got a rubber seal on the back of it, whereas the old one had a copper one. All the ones I've ever come across in the past have always had a copper washer on them. Right, so that's that in tight. The other thing I haven't tried is this electrical connector. I haven't tried it in the end. Oh, perfect, brilliant, that's just what I want. So this fan switch that fits in the bottom of the radiator on this is a 1994 Daihatsu Hijet, is actually for a Vauxhall. So that just goes to show you. So hopefully that will have cured this problem. So I'll show you the filling procedure next. Got the fan switch in, all the water and coolant's dropped. So now I'm going to start filling this system up. But the biggest problem with these, if you Google Daihatsu Hijet, what you will find is the majority of people have got problems with air in the system, and it is an absolute pain. We've had problems with air in the system on this one as well, and what that causes is when there's a lot of air in the system, it causes it to overheat. Like I say, if you Google it or go on YouTube, you'll see numerous different ways of trying to resolve it. And so much so I've read stories of where people have tried and can't get the air out of the system and end up selling the vehicle because it's causing them nothing but trouble. I've actually found a way through trial and error of bleeding this so that there's no air in it. There is instructions on the front here, which if you follow them, it gets you more or less there. So these are the instructions. I'll go through those with you, and once I've gone through the instructions of how to fill the system up, I'll explain to you the way that I've found of getting all the air out of the system, because it is, to me, it is the only way that's worked so far. So here's the instructions, and these are behind the panel on the front by the radiator. So this is the system you follow. This obviously it's self-explanatory. So open the heater valve into the warm position, Right, okay, so we'll go and do that. Heater into the warm position, back round to the front. Next step, I've lost count the amount of times I've done this. Right, remove the plug of the heater air bleeding pipe number 1. So there's number 1 there, at the upper part of the radiator. Right, so that is, there's your radiator, and it's this thing here. I don't know if you can see it or not. So with that, pair of pliers on it, pull that clip off, and it's got the rubber bung on it. Take that off as well. Okay, so we're on to number 2. Remove the cap provided at the engine side number 2, which is there. I've already done that. That's what I removed earlier. I'll show you. Which was that one there. So I've done that now. So number 3, put water into the radiator from the radiator cap 3, which is this one here. So I'll go and get some water for that. I've looked up how much water and coolant this vehicle has. It's 4.5 litres. So what I've got is I've got a jug here with a couple of litres of water in. So I'm just going to put the water in to start with. So I'm putting 2 litres of water in before I put any antifreeze in. Right, so that's 2 litres of water in. Now what I'm looking for here, if you go back over to the instructions, is you put the water into the radiator from the radiator cap 3, which is what I've just been doing. When the water starts to overflow from the engine side number 2, close the cap and plug. So what I'm looking for now is water to be coming out of that one. So I've got 2 litres of water in now, so I'm just going to get some antifreeze and start pouring that in. So I've just got some antifreeze now. I'm just pouring the antifreeze mix in. Right, I can hear a noise inside. Right, so that's leaking out of there now, well, overflowing, which it should be doing. The only thing is, I've only put, let's have a look, tell you how much I've put in it. It's supposed to be a 4.5 litre capacity system, this, and I've put in so far just over 2.5 litres in. So I put 2.5 litres in, and it's coming out of the inside radiator cap. What I'm going to do is, as it says on here, when it starts to come out of the inside one, then close that cap inside, which I've just done, and then further fill the radiator with water. So I've put 2.5 litres of coolant and water antifreeze mix in so far, and that caused it to come out of the inside filler cap. So if it's a 4.5 litre system, then I've got another 2 litres to go in it. Now over here, this is where it differs from what it says on here. So on here, you're putting the water in, and then once it starts to overflow in the inside engine side, number 2, which it was doing, close the cap and the plug. Right, so I've closed the cap, but this plug here I'm not closing. It's there on the bumper. I'm leaving that off. Now the reason for that is, if you follow this instructions, put that cap on, this is where you have all the problems. That is on the bottom of the heater matrix or the heater radiator, which is situated, if I go back, so there's your radiator, and then go back even further, the heater radiator is there. So what happens is, if you close that bung, the rubber plug that it tells you to close on there, you're trapping air into it. Now it does say on here that carry on filling the radiator, then warm the engine till the fan operates twice, and then stop the engine. After it cools, add cooling water to the radiator reservoir tank, which is that header tank that I cleaned before. The problem is there, it still doesn't get rid of the air out of this radiator that's way up at the top here, that's up there. It doesn't get rid of that. It's supposed to, but it doesn't. So I'll show you how I do it, and it seems to have worked every time. And like I said earlier, go on Google, and there's so many people having this problem. So I'm just going to carry on filling this radiator. So I'm just going to carry on filling that until it's completely full, and then I'll show you what to do next, or what I do next. Right, the radiator's full. Now I'm going to show you what I do with this, and like I say, this is the only way I've found of getting air out of these systems on these. So what I've got this, which is a purging system. Now the idea with these purging systems is you fit it to your radiator cap or your radiator filler, and once you've done that, you normally have another pipe which you fill with water, and when you put compressed air through it, the compressed air then allows it to suck the water out of a reservoir that you've got and pulls it all through the system and gets rid of the air. I'm going to use this in the opposite way, so I've just put it onto the filler cap there. That's sealed on there because I've tightened it up with this, so that's tight. So then I've got a little tap here. I've got a tap on the compressor there. So what I'll do, there we go. That's turned on, that tap there. So if I turn that one off, turn the compressor on. If you can see in there on that, if you look in there at that pipe, what I'm aiming for now is water to come squirting out of there, which will then force all the air out as well. So I'm going to open this valve. Right, I can hear that gurgling. So what I've done now, while I was pressurising the cap here and the water was coming out of here, while it was coming out, I've put the rubber bung on, stopping the air going in there. So that's the way to do that, and that's the only way I've found of being able to do this. So now I'm just going to put the clip back on there. Right, so that's back on there. So now there should be no air at all in the heater matrix above here. So this heater radiator should be just full of water. I'm just going to top the radiator up a little bit more. Right, so the radiator's now full. Put the cap on there. Right, the cooling system's filled. Fan switch is in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start the engine, and I'm going to leave it running to get the engine hot, and then hopefully then we'll see whether the fan kicks in. Right, so remember the problems I was having with this Daihatsu Hijet overheating, and I've sorted out the switch for the fan. So I've put a new one of those in the radiator. The fan's working, so everything's fine there. Mrs H has started using the vehicle again, and I'm having overheating issues again. So I know the fan's working, I know the fan switch is working because that's a new one. I've shown you how I was fitting that. So what I've looked at is I went underneath the front again to have another look at see whether there was the fan or whether the switch. And what I found this time was the radiator was cold. So the engine was hot and overheating, but the radiator is cold. So that to me is indicating that the thermostat is stuck closed. So what I'm going to do is I'll show you where the thermostat is and how to replace it. It's really easy. So I'll talk you through that now. So we gain access to that through the side door. Right, so to gain access to the thermostat, it's easy. Side door. There's two side doors in this van, so you can open the other side as well, and you can work on both sides, which I'll do in a minute. To gain the access to the engine, the main part of the engine, you tilt both the seats, the passenger seat and the driver's seat, backwards, and that allows you access under there, as you see me doing when I was doing the radiator fan. So with this now, that's the floor of the van, and this is the carpet here. So basically all I've done is the carpet just folds back. That gives you access to this thing here. Many years ago, I used to call these a Dutch oven, but they used to be between the front seats, and that would give you access to the engines. So it's this panel here. It has 3 12mm bolts on the top, which I've taken out, and it has 7 10mm bolts around the side. So once they're out, that lifts off. So this is the rear of the engine here. And this underneath here, you can see it. Let me try and get in there. I'll point to it with my finger. That is the thermostat housing there. And there's just 2 bolts on that, 2 12mm bolts. Right, so this thermostat housing is reasonably easy to get to. I've undone one bolt here, which has come out, and then that's got a bracket on there which holds all these pipes in place. You can see the thermostat housing there now. The only thing is, it's a little bit tricky because all these pipes are in the way for getting to this bottom bolt. You can see where I've left the socket on there now. It's just a little bit fiddly getting in there because of all them pipes. But they're only 2 12mm bolts, so once I've got those out, I can lift the top off the housing and take the thermostat out. Right, been and got myself a coffee, so I'll put that to one side so I don't spill it, because my usual one is I'll put my coffee down and catch it with my elbow, or the spanner slips and that's my coffee gone. Okay, so I've got the 2 bolts out of the housing now. So there's the housing, you can see it completely. Now there's 2 different bolts on this. There's this size and this size, which I wasn't aware of, but I'll need to make sure when I put these back in, the longer one goes on the bottom side, the shorter one goes where the pipe clip goes. So now I'm just going to see if this housing lifts off. Yeah, there we go. So that's lifted off there. If I can get it up high enough, I can lift the thermostat out. You can see the thermostat there, which will lift out. I promise you it will. It's just a bit difficult trying to do it holding the phone as well. Right, I had to put the camera down for that. So I've now got the thermostat out, and it doesn't look very good, does it? And rather than test it, I mean, I could test that, see if it works. Rather than messing about with that, I'm just going to buy a brand new one and just drop it in for the sake of, I think they're only I think they're only about £5 for a new thermostat, and then a new gasket as well, because obviously it needs, between here it has a gasket, so while that's apart, there's no point in leaving the old gasket in. I'll replace the gasket as well. So I'm going to clean that off now and then get a new thermostat and gasket and replace it. I've got the new thermostat now. Well, whenever I've worked on any vehicles in the past, the thermostat housing always has a gasket. This is half of it, and this gasket goes around the thermostat housing to stop water leaking out, obviously. And I was quite surprised when the new thermostat arrived. They don't have that gasket anymore. What they have is this rubber seal around the edge. So that sits in the thermostat housing, and this rubber seal actually seals on the inside of it. It does the same purpose. I was just a bit surprised about that. So now I've got this, I can get it fitted, get it running, and I'll let you know how it all goes. Right, so that hasn't worked. I've just tried fitting this thermostat into the housing, thinking that this rubber seal would seal it. It doesn't work at all. It doesn't even fit in the housing. So what I'm going to have to do is take this off, which it comes off easy enough, so that just peels off there. So what I have to do is take that off. So that now is the same as any other thermostat I've ever seen in the past. And I'm going to have to either make or go and buy one of these. Well, underneath now I've got the new fan switch fitted. Got the engine running now. I'm just waiting, there's the fan, I'm just waiting for the engine to get hot enough now so that the fan will kick in, and well, hopefully the fan will kick in, and then that's all the problems solved. Right, so there we go, that's the fan running. Just turned itself off again. And then when that gets hot, it'll kick back in again, so that's that issue resolved. Right, so there's the Daihatsu Hijet, all up and running again, keeping itself cool, which is what it should be doing. So, right, there's another good job done. Plenty more vehicles to be going at. Well, I've shown you how to change the switch, the fan switch on the radiator, and also the thermostat, and where the thermostat housing's positioned. So, and also how to purge the system, which is a big problem, and I do find no matter where you look, people are having problems with overheating with these Hijets. So the way I've shown you how to do it, I do hope it's helped you. So and I hope you've enjoyed the video, and in some way, if it helps you keep your Hijet on the road, then good.